No, thank you. Sleepy. Come back in an hour.
Need sleepy.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God!
It's now time for the Billy C. Morning Show, part of the Billy C. Boxing Network. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
Good morning, everybody. We're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Morning Show. Good morning to everybody. A special shout out to everyone watching us on Fight TV. And don't forget, if you want to download the app, it's a piece of cake now. Yeah, life is good. Life has been made easy. Just go to fight.tv. That's FITE.tv/Billy C. It's that simple. Download it right now on your handheld, and you can watch the fight today. Watch our show. And you can watch fights too. But today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant, located in beautiful St. Simons Island, Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. And don't forget, if you're a snowbird, you're heading south for the winter, Sal's is a 15-minute detour off of I-95. That includes stopping for a couple of lights, so you could probably make it quicker than that. Do it, man. Find out why we talk so highly of Sal's food, and once you try it, it'll become a regular stop. Trust me when I tell you. www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by a new game app. It's called Fire Fan. It's pretty cool. It takes every single sport. You can play it for free if you log in under our name. And if you go to our website, www.billycboxing.com, you could see it on the left-hand side, and just click the banner. It's firefan.com/BillyCBoxing. Sign up today for free using our code. It doesn't cost you anything to play this new app. However, you can win some money. So what's better than that? Sign up for free, play for free, win some money. That's firefan.com/BillyCBoxing. So check that out. And today's show is being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on a Plane, is available right now where all good books are sold. And you can literally get a copy of it right now by visiting BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. Find out why we got a 5-star, 5-star rating across the board. Hey, listen, coming up a little bit later on the show, Dax Khan will be joining us with some pretty good topics to talk about. Update on Mago Aduzumov, what the word on the curb in social media is about the Luis Ortiz fight this past weekend. Dax was also part of the final media call for the big fight scheduled this weekend between Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward. So we'll get his thoughts on that. Also, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, it's officially made official. So that fight is officially official. Okay? Even though it was on the schedule already, all Danny Garcia had to do was get by Samuel Vargas this weekend, which he did pretty easily. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And speaking of easily, it wasn't easy to stay awake during the Luis Ortiz and Malik Scott fight. What a snooze fest that was. And all I could say with the Danny Garcia-Keith Thurman fight and the prelims, which we'll talk about, it seems to me like the PBC is back to showcasing fights. And this is why anybody that thought that the PBC was going to save boxing was mistaken. So we'll talk about those fights, a couple other fights in the that made some, made some kind of impact on the sport, and basically HBO seems to have the sport of boxing, at least the way we're looking at it right now, on their backs to close out 2016. And speaking about having things on your back, how about this guy joining me right now to get his thoughts all the way from the Sunshine State, my man Sal Rocky Senecola. What's up, Sal?
Good morning, Billy C. How are you today, pal?
I'm doing okay. You know, I watched these fights this past weekend, and
Oh, me too.
oh man, I mean, you know, we wonder, you know, you and I find ourselves when we talk about this off air, how we gotta stop, you know, going back in the day. You know, we're always saying back in the day, and you know, it's always like we're naysaying about the sport of boxing. Well, guess what? After you watch a couple of fights like we saw this past weekend, how can you not? I mean, let's start off with the heavyweight fight, which I think everybody was kind of looking forward to. Luis Ortiz, a guy that many believe might very well be the best heavyweight out there. He improved to 26-0 with 22 knockouts when he scored a one-sided 12-round unanimous decision over Malik Scott, who drops to 38-3 with a draw. What a snooze fest. This had to be one of the most boring fights of it. I mean, this reminded me of a Mayweather fight. What do you think?
Billy, this is probably one of the worst fights I ever forced myself to sit through, and I looked to get up in between many times just because I couldn't take it anymore. And you know what was so evident? If you listen to the fans in the crowd, you could hear a freaking pin drop. I couldn't believe it. There was nothing there. And you know what? Luis Ortiz did not impress me. I'll tell you what, there's a handful of heavyweights out there I think could beat him. He's just a big guy. He did not impress me. He can have his 340 amateur fights and undefeated 25-0. But you know what? Unless he purposely carried Malik Scott, which I don't think he did, he didn't show me anything. He couldn't cut the ring off on the guy. He followed him around like a little milk truck. And definitely not impressed with Luis Ortiz, but even less so with Malik Scott, who was nothing more than a punching bag and didn't even offer any kind of offense. And when he did, it was ineffective. I couldn't believe it. He fell down more times through either punches or by himself in the first couple of rounds than I think I do in a 10-year period by running through the woods and tripping on the branches. But I'm telling you right now, it was disgusting. I could not wait for that fight to end. I think that's the only time I heard cheering from the crowd was when the fight ended.
Yeah, you know, you're saying you could hear a pin drop. I got news for you. I heard people snoring. What are you talking about, pin drop? Listen. And
I unofficially scored 120 to 105.
Oh, you can't. I mean, listen, he didn't win around.
I didn't want to do that.
Malik Scott. I mean, here's the thing. You hit it on the head. You know, Ortiz. You know, I hear people saying all the time, oh, you know, and Ortiz pounding his glove. Come on, let's fight Malik Scott. And we can criticize Malik Scott all we want. I mean, he went in there. His game plan was to survive 12 rounds. That's it. I mean, it was evident about that. But here's the thing. You know, when do we put, and everybody's blaming Malik Scott, and later on we'll hear what social media has to say through Dax. You know, he's, monitors that. But, you know, everybody, from what I understand, is killing Malik Scott on this fight. But the truth of the matter is exactly what you said. What about Ortiz? I mean, if a fighter's going to step in the ring with you and you know he's going to run, or it becomes evident after the first 3 minutes that he's going to run, isn't it up to you to make that fight happen? And you're right. Ortiz, with all these amateur fights, all this experience, he's following him around like a dog. I mean, he didn't know how to cut the ring off. I mean, it was.
No,
listen, it looked pathetic. I mean, on both of them. We knew Malik Scott was going to put on some kind of performance that we would be, talking about forever. But I thought the pressure was on Luis Ortiz to make it his fight, and he failed to do that, Sal.
You know, and let's talk about this. There were a couple times where I stepped in the ring and it was a mismatch, and Richard Jacquet would be in my corner and says, Sal, go out there and end this fight right now. And you know, the whole thing is this. This guy, for whatever reason, Luis Ortiz could not put down effectively for a 10 count this punching bag. He couldn't put him away. 10 rounds, he had to waltz around the ring, follow him, and this guy was tripping more times on his own falling down than I think a couple times where he got dropped. Like I said, it was probably the worst fight I've ever seen in my entire life, or the most painful fight to sit through in my entire life.
Yeah, it's the fact that we had to sit through it. I think makes us all more stupider than we were when we turned it.
Because there was nothing different. There was nothing. Each round was predictable. It was the same reflection of the last round. And like I said, I was equally not, less impressed, I'll say, with Ortiz. Here he is. He's talking about fighting this one and that one. I don't see it. This guy's a big guy, yeah. He might have a punch, yeah. But I'll tell you what, maybe to the credit to Malik Scott, he couldn't put him away. And like I said, I don't see this guy in a ring with a top heavyweight. I mean, well, there's top contenders that are. Anthony Joshua, I think we'll figure him out real quick and lay some thunder on his head.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. The more I think of the heavyweight division today, and the players involved, my man Anthony Joshua is the best one of them all. He destroys all these guys, including Ortiz, Klitschko, old man Klitschko. Forget about Deontay Wilder. He's running like a scared bitch. But anyway, let's talk about some other fights real quick. Danny Garcia. It's officially official, because we all knew. I mean, not only did we know, but it was on the schedule. The fight was already on the schedule between Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman. But yet Danny Garcia went and fought this past weekend, improved to 33-0 with 19 knockouts when he stopped Samuel Vargas in the 7th round. Vargas drops to 25-3-1. This fight really showed me nothing about Danny Garcia. It was clearly a fight just for him to get paid and move on. And I have a problem with that, Sal. Me
too.
Here's a guy. Well, let's listen to his father. His father's got a big mouth, right? We know that. And they're talking about a possible showdown between Danny Garcia and Terrence Crawford, even though they already have Keith Thurman, right? So Angel Garcia, who's Danny Garcia's father, is talking shit about Terrence Crawford. And he says, you got nothing, Crawford. You want to bet $1 million that Danny would whoop your ass all over the ring? He says, move up to 147 and we'll fight you. You know that you're not making any money. We get $2 million to $3 million to fight an opponent. What do you get? And he goes on and on and on. But my point is this. This is the problem. That comment right there is the problem with boxing today. If it's true that Danny Garcia even got $1 million to fight a tune-up fight in Samuel Vargas this past weekend, well, you know what? More power to Danny Garcia. But that's the problem with boxing. That's why you don't see real fights. Because why the hell should Danny Garcia fight any real opponent when he can get $1 million or more to fight a bum like Samuel Vargas? And no disrespect to Samuel Vargas, but a bum in the terms of, at the level of Danny Garcia. Which leads me to a Keith Thurman fight. Keith Thurman, I give him credit for fighting Sean Porter, but I don't think that Danny Garcia against Keith Thurman is going to be a competitive fight. I think Keith Thurman's going to knock him out. What's your thoughts on all of this?
And that's what I saw after the fight. Danny Garcia was touting Keith Thurman, who did a decent job as an announcer, and he was good. And Keith Thurman observed, and all I could see was Keith Thurman licking his chops, because I think Danny Garcia will definitely be losing that fight against Keith Thurman. That's not even the case. And what you just said is equally true. Samuel Vargas and Danny Garcia were just two different levels, two different class of fighters. Vargas, he might have tried, he was game, but you know what? He kept that left down low, and Danny Garcia had a good overhand chopping right that dropped him in the second round and hurt him throughout the fight. But I never saw Vargas try to change his plan or lift his plan or lift that arm up or do something. Maybe in the 4th round he tried to get cute for a minute, but at the end of the round, Garcia reminded him, hey, you're in here with me. So, no, it wasn't even that competitive. I had Danny Garcia pitching a shutout. But I also think that Danny Garcia will not get past Keith Thurman.
Nah, Danny Garcia...
If Thurman shows up, the Thurman we saw against Porter, Nah, it's not even a competition. It'll be a fight. I like Danny Garcia. He stays in a pocket, sure, but Keith Thurman's going to outbox and move all over him and hit him from the outside.
Right. I first of all, Keith Thurman, and I'm not. Listen, I've lost some respect for Keith Thurman too because of his mouth. I mean, he acts like he's a pound for pound top fighter, which he's not. But the truth of the matter is, I think Keith Thurman beats Danny Garcia, and quite honestly, who the hell really wants to see this fight? I think more people wanted to see the rematch between Thurman and Sean Porter than Danny Garcia. I don't know how Danny Garcia even gets into the mix. It was a typical PBC card. You know, yes, we got treated to some great cards from the PBC in the past, but this particular card was awful. And a great example of that was the Jarrett Hurd fight. You know, he gets put in there with Jojo Dan, who's a tough guy, but the size difference was so apparent. I mean, Jarrett Hurd was at least 2 weight classes bigger, and he showed nothing. He showed me that he's slow, methodical. If Jojo Dan was a little bigger, he gives Hurd all kinds of trouble. I'm just not. I'm just not impressed with that. And quite honestly, the other fight that was on that card, Javier Fortuna, gets dropped in the first round, wins an exciting fight, close fight over Omar Douglas. I mean, to be honest, that fight really was the most exciting fight of the weekend. Yeah,
it's true. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's when you're looking at the fight card that opens up. The fight on a fight card that opens up a television broadcast that blows all the other TV broadcasted fights away. I mean, I don't know. But, hey, listen, we got some emails. Let's read some emails before we get too pissed off. Jesse says, hey, Billy C., I want to see Hurd fight Cota, John Jackson, Liam Smith, or Williams, or even Willie Nelson. I want to see Hurd fight someone real. Willie Nelson might be a good matchup because of the height. But let me tell you, Jarrett Hurd is slow, and what bothered me the most is after the first minute of the round, Hurd knew that there was no way that he was going to get hurt by Jojo Dan. Instead of going in for the kill, Sal, and trying to even, risk taking a punch or two, this safety first friggin' bullshit caused this guy to just dance around and be safe for the whole fight, which really made me sick. I could see being safe if you're fighting a killer, if you fight a guy like, I hate to say it, but Malik Scott fighting safe. You could see it. You could understand it because he doesn't want to get hit. But Jarrett Hurd was 2 weight classes bigger than Jojo Dan. Jojo Dan in his best day wasn't going to hurt Hurd, but yet Hurd still fought safety first. I don't reward this guy with any kind of big fight. He proved nothing on Saturday.
I heard you.
I know. Well, let me finish his thoughts. He says, "What's your thoughts on Garcia and Thurman's heated face-off? Was it legit or staged?" Of course, it was staged. These two guys knew they were going to fight each other. I mean, this is WWE all over. It's sad. It's sad. It really is. He says, "I want to see Socha versus Corrales, Pedraza, or maybe the Walters Lomachenko winner." I love Jason Socha. I think he definitely deserves to take on a Pedraza. I think that makes sense, 100%. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, what do you think about that, Sal?
It's a good one. It's a good one. I think it'll be all right. It can't be any worse than what we saw the other night.
Yeah, I don't blame you there, but
I know, but it's funny. Garcia, I don't even see if they make a fight against Terrence Crawford if Crawford's on his wheels and outboxing. I think that might be even a more competitive fight than Keith Thurman. But I think Thurman, if he's on, he's going to beat Danny Garcia.
Terrence Crawford beats Danny Garcia without a problem, and yeah. I think that Keith Thurman beats
2 different fashions.
Yeah, Keith Thurman beats Danny Garcia. I've lost a lot of respect for Danny Garcia. This is from my man Brett from Canada. He says, "Hey, Billy C. and Sal, I'm pretty disappointed that King Kong didn't take Malik Scott out and that it went to 12 rounds. I saw the fight on Sky Sports feed, and one of the announcers said it was the worst fights he had ever called. Eddie Hearn will have a tough time selling Ortiz to the European people now, especially when Chisora knocked out Scott in 6. Be interesting to see what happens there. I just think the inability of Luis Ortiz to cut the ring off, and the referee didn't help either. But yeah, I hear you, Brett. He says, I was hoping to see an upset with Vargas over Garcia, but it didn't happen, and I was disappointed with Vargas and his corner. He had no defense for the right hand, and the corner didn't make any adjustments. Garcia was allowed to be first and set the pace, which is a classic no-no in the sport. That being said, I do want to see Garcia versus Thurman in March. Hopefully, it'll be a great fight. I just my whole thought process on this, Sal, is simple. If you schedule a fight with two fighters, fighter A versus fighter B, why bother having that other BS fight in between? I mean, basically, it gives the fighter a chance to make money. I get it, but when you have a performance like that, doesn't it rip the fans off?
Well, it may, because you look at it, and it's kind of anticlimactic as far as what you would expect to see, and you're going to be calculating and judging. Well, how's he going to do against this one? And like I said, right now, Danny Garcia, if I didn't see his performance against Samuel Vargas, I probably wouldn't already have called Keith Thurman a victor if they get in a ring and fight, because I wouldn't have seen what I didn't see from Danny Garcia. I saw Danny did good. He had a nice overhand chopping right, but Vargas gave him that opportunity with a bullseye by keeping that left low and keeping his chin right there. And like I said, I think Keith Thurman was licking his chops at ringside, watching it, saying, "Hey, it's gonna be a good night for me."
Well, the only thing is Garcia has trouble. First of all, no one thought that Samuel Vargas was going to beat Garcia. No one thought that. And Garcia did dominate the fight, which you would expect in a fight of that nature. But he didn't show me anything that is going to make me feel, although Coach in here in the chat room is disagreeing, he thinks Danny Garcia is going to beat Thurman. I think Thurman, as critical as I am of Thurman because of Thurman the person now, I can't take away from his skill set. I mean, he's got a solid chin. He's got a power punch. He can box. He can move. And the movement factor is going to give Danny all kinds of trouble. And you hit it on the head. Danny's defense wasn't that great to begin with on Saturday, and he's going to need to tighten up his D against Thurman. And Samuel Vargas was just slow, methodical, and talk about no defense. The guy didn't even have his hands up. He was protecting his midsection more than anything. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, and what I saw was, and Vargas was right there in front of Danny Garcia. Keith Thurman is not going to be. He's going to give him lateral movement. He's going to hit for outside. He's going to get inside. I see Thurman, moving in and out, moving around him and outboxing him and getting in a pocket and making it a good fight. Well, in fact, it's a shame. I thought Luis Ortiz, that's how Luis Ortiz and Malik Scott, that should have been the type of dominance that he showed against Malik Scott as Danny Garcia did against Vargas.
Well, that's how we should have seen. You're right. We should have seen Luis Scott dominate Malik Scott like
Ortiz. Yeah,
Luis Ortiz should have dominated Malik Scott the way Danny Garcia dominated Samuel Vargas. I agree.
Exactly.
But the thing is I don't know what that fight does for Danny Garcia in terms of preparing him for Thurman. But we'll wait and see. Got another couple of emails we'll get through real quick here. Raheem says, I was wrong about the outcome of Pacquiao-Vargas, but I wasn't overly impressed with Vargas. Vargas let me down. I think he got overconfident and lost. Will his next fight be Mayweather or not? I think Mayweather is retired for good because he has nothing to prove. But in your opinion, what needs to take place for the rematch? I just think that Pacquiao's pay-per-view numbers are down, so people have less interest compared to Mayweather, who holds a pay-per-view record, made the most money, and clearly has the bigger following because he's more exciting, and his earnings prove it as evidence. What's the odds of the rematch? Under 50-50 chance or over 50-50? First and foremost, Floyd Mayweather, you could say what you want about Floyd, but there's one thing that I don't think anyone can say. He's not exciting. Floyd Mayweather is not an exciting fighter. Never was, never will be. When you think of Floyd Mayweather, you think of money that he made, and you think of his undefeated record. That's it. You don't think of great fights. You don't think of great performances. He has no great knockouts under his belt. He's got nothing like that. He is not the best ever, not even close. It's a joke that he's even been able to fool the fans as much as he has. Now, with that said, Manny Pacquiao is clearly a more exciting fighter, even at the stage he's at now. Will the fight be? Will the fight happen? Yeah, it's going to happen. I said it 2 years ago. Sal's a witness to that. Is it over?
Right
50,
at my restaurant.
Over 50-50 chance? 100%. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in May. It's going to happen in May. So don't worry about it. Is it going to be exciting? Is it going to be any different than the last one? Probably not. But guess what? It's going to happen because Floyd Mayweather doesn't have the balls to fight anybody else, and there's nobody else out there that makes any sense for Floyd. Whether he's got the balls to fight a Triple G or a Terrence Crawford or a Thurman or a Sean Porter or an Errol Spence Jr. or any other relative fighter in the division today, whether he's got the balls to do it or not, that's besides the point. The most logical fight for him, money-wise and risk-wise, is a rematch with Manny Pacquiao. And the same can be said for Manny Pacquiao. You know, does he have to go fight Errol Spence and all the top fighters to prove what? Both of these fighters don't have anything left to prove except they want to make some more money, they want to get a big payday, and that equals, when you factor in all of the facts on this fight, these two guys will definitely have a rematch in May. So you can mark that down. This one is from my man Luke. He says, "Hey, Billy C., this is Luke. I'm the English gentleman living in Korea. I'm a regular listener of over 3 years, but I haven't emailed you in a long time. Regarding Mayweather-Pacquiao 2, I see Mayweather winning again. On your show, you often say they've both aged, which is true, but if they had fought at their peaks, it would have been different. 6 years ago, Mayweather was the best boxer in the world, and Pacquiao was the best fighter in the world. You can still be the best boxer in the world at age 38 to 40, but you can't be the best fighter in the world at that age. It's different, in my opinion. The fight would have been much more competitive at that time." You know, he makes a great point, Sal. What do you think?
You know, a very good point. I would have to concur and agree with him 100% across the board there. Definitely. That's a very refreshing, great observation on his part.
Yeah, I mean, a fighter with a style that goes in and take no prisoner definitely slows down more than a guy who is cautious and safety first. So, you make a great point, Luke. He says, by the way, any chance of doing a blast from the past on Jimmy Wild? Yeah, we will. We've done one on him before. You can check the website, BillyCBoxing.com, and look under the Blast from the Past section, and I'm pretty sure you'll find a blast under Jimmy Wild. But if not, we will do one in the near future, so I appreciate that. I'll talk to my man on that, and we'll try and schedule that sometime in the near future. We got a couple other blasts lined up, including this week's, which is Tommy the Hitman Hearns, so I'm looking forward to that one. Let's see, what do I got? One last email, Sal. This one's from Alex T. He says, I get confused which Alex it is, but
we already got a couple other.
Yeah, I think this is my other Alex T. He says, today I read an article on a website about Livingstone Bramble. It's one of these best I faced articles. The writer said Edwin Rosario thumbed Bramble in the eye, and Bramble went down and never got up. I had to read this description twice to make sure I didn't read it wrong. I hate stuff like this because the description of the Bramble-Rosario fight couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is that Edwin Rosario beat the ever-living shit out of Livingston Bramble and knocked his ass out in the second round. I just watched it again on YouTube before I typed this email. Rosario punched Bramble from ring post to ring post in the second round until he landed a crushing right hand to the head that ended the fight. The description of the fight bothers me, for one, because it's absolutely not true, but also because the history of boxing is being forgotten about. In today's age of experts who know everything about boxing because of what they read on websites, the accomplishments of some of the all-time greatest fighters are being ignored simply based on wins and losses. I'm a huge Bramble fan, but I'm also a huge Rosario fan, and Rosario had enough demons outside the ring that we should that we should at the very least honor and respect his accomplishments as a boxer. To suggest that he didn't win that title fair and square is an insult to a man who sadly is no longer here to defend his reputation. The fight doesn't even last 6 minutes, so I would ask anyone listening to pull it up on YouTube and decide for yourself whether or not Rosario won that fight on a foul. I agree with Alex T. Rosario did win the fight via a knockout. Bramble was a tough guy, had my man Boom Boom Mancini's number, but Edwin Rosario was a guy, we did a blast on him, Sal, and Rosario is a guy that changed Hector Camacho forever. And I'm all with Alex T on this one, and I think you guys should watch the YouTube, Livingstone Bramble against Edwin Rosario, and email us your thoughts, Billy at Talkin' Boxing, TalkinBoxing.com. What do you think, Sal?
I think so. I agree with the email 100%. And, yeah, Bramble was cagey. It was good. I sparred many, many, many times with Livingston Bramble over on Squirrelwood Road in West Patterson at Duga's Gym above a sausage factory. Bobby Ches and I and Livingston Bramble were pretty much there daily. Yeah, he was cagey. He was good, but, yeah, that fight, yeah, he was beat by that fight. I don't think that thumb had anything to do with it.
I don't think the thumb in the eye had anything to do with it, but anyway, just to get you caught
I can't see.
Just to get you, cut me. Just to get you caught up on some of the other fights, WBA bantamweight champ Jamie McDonnell retained his title via a 12-round unanimous decision, but it was a controversial decision over Liborio Solis. McDonnell improves to 29 wins, a couple of losses, and a draw with 13 knockouts. Solis drops to 25-5-1. The way the judges saw it, 116, 112, 115, 113, 117, 111, all in favor of McDonnell. But many ringside in Monte Carlo felt that Liborio Solis was the busier fighter, landed the harder punches, landed more punches, and still got the loss. So this just goes to show you sometimes fights are, already determined before the bell rings. Martin Murray got a W by outpointing Nuhu Lowell, who was a late sub in their fight, to improve to 34 wins, 4 losses, and a draw. The way the judges scored that, 116, 111, 117, 110 twice. Jason Sosha improved to 20 wins, 1 loss, and 4 draws when he fought a hard fight against Stephen Smith. That was also on that card, on the undercard. Sosha improves to 20 wins, 1 loss, and 4 draws. Smith drops to 24 wins, 3 losses, and no draws. And in the light heavyweight division, former world champ in the super middleweight division, Robert Stiglitz improved to 50 wins, 5 losses, and a draw when he beat Mehdi Amir for the European light heavyweight title. 33-5-2 is what Amir drops to now, Sal. So that's what we got going on there. So in any event, we got some other scores to keep everybody caught up on. In the NFL, the Titans topped the Packers 47-25 to improve to 5-5. The Packers, well, they've dropped several games in a row. They now have a losing record, Sal, 4 wins and 5 losses. So keep an eye on them. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers having a rough year. And
Vince Lombardi's going to be rolling.
Yeah, he is. He probably already is. The Titans, though, quietly 5-5 now, getting themselves back in the mix. Speaking about back in the mix, how about the Redskins? They're quietly under the radar. They improved to 5 wins, 3 losses, and a draw and a tie this year when they beat the Vikings 26-20 on Sunday. The Vikings dropped to 5-4 and have lost the last 4 in a row. If you recall, they were the last undefeated team. And they lost 4 in a row, falling apart in Minnesota.
Talk about the tumble. Whoa.
Oh, man. I mean, this was a team. Norv Turner was the offensive coordinator who just walked away a couple weeks ago. So, anyway, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 36-10 over the Bears. The Chiefs, the Chiefs improved to 7-2. They were down 17-0 against the Super Bowl, visiting, I'll say. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but the Panthers were in the Super Bowl last year. And the Chiefs were down 17-0 in this game and turned around and won 20-17 to improve to 7-2. They share the best record in football right now, starting this season 0-2. The Eagles topped the Falcons 24-15. How about my Jets losing again, 9-6? They put my guy in, Bryce Petty, but they didn't let him throw the ball. They kept handing the ball off, doing stupid plays. The Jets organization is garbage. I am so as a matter of fact, I may not even watch another Jet game. I'm so fed up with the Jets that it's a joke. The organization is a joke.
It ain't the Giants organization.
Yeah, well, the Giants, they play tonight. Let's see how they do.
They play tonight.
But let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. The Jets, they can't even draw flies to the stadium anymore. The stadium was virtually half full. Can't blame them. They're playing the worst team in football, one of the worst teams in football in the Rams. And the Jets, they get the title of being the second worst team in football as of today. The only worst team is one of their ones that they won't beat, and that's the Cleveland Browns. Jets lose 9-6. Broncos top the Saints 25-23. The Texans over the Jaguars 24-21. The Dolphins, exciting game for the Dolphins. They beat the Chargers 31-24. The Dolphins all of a sudden are in the mix in the AFC. The Cowboys keep winning. They beat the Steelers 35-30. Had to come from behind to do it. And I tell you something, anybody that was thinking to bench this kid, Dak Prescott, for Tony Romo should have their head examined, including the owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones. But the worst part of the story of Tony Romo is rumor has it that he's going to the Jets for next year. I can't believe it. It just goes to show me how terrible the Jets organization is. It's garbage. I'm puking here. The Cardinals topped the 49ers in a tough game, 23-20. 49ers were a 13.5-point underdog in this game, kept it close. And in the late game, the Seahawks beat the Patriots. Yeah, you heard that right. The Patriots lose 31-24 in that game. So congratulations to the Hawks. Over in the NBA, the Cavaliers beat the Hornets 100-93. Kevin Love, 17 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists in that one. The Magic topped the Thunder 119-117. Serge Ibaka has 31 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks to lead the Orlando Magic. Timberwolves over the Lakers, 125-99. Andrew Wiggins, 47 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. The Warriors behind Steph Curry, 133-120 over the Suns. Curry had 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. The Trailblazers over the Nuggets, 112-105. Damian Lillard, 37 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. To wrap up the NBA action. Over in the NHL, the Jets over the Kings, 3-2 in a shootout. The Canucks beat the Stars, 5-4 in overtime. The Wild over the Senators, 2-1 in overtime. My Blackhawks, I like the Blackhawks. Even though I'm an Islanders fan, I'm going with the Blackhawks. They beat the Canadiens 3-2. In a battle of two top teams, Blackhawks now 11 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws with 24 points. The Canadiens 13 wins, 2 losses, and a draw with 27 points. Brewers over the Avalanche 2-0, and the Rangers keep winning 3-1 over the Oilers. That was going on in other sports this weekend, Sal.
Well, that sounds pretty good, I tell you. But you did forget to mention the only game that my fellow Georgians really care about, and that is that our Georgia Bulldogs beat Auburn.
Beautiful game. I tell you, talk about college football, great point. A lot of big teams went down this weekend. Undefeated Michigan loses. Clemson, undefeated, loses. Washington, undefeated, loses. The top 3 teams behind my team, Alabama, who coasted to a victory over Mississippi State, all lose. So it'll be interesting to see how the rankings are. I probably won't get a chance to look until later on tonight. When it comes out. Actually, I don't think they'll be officially out till tomorrow anyway. But Sal is right. The Georgia Bulldogs in a great game over the Auburn Tigers in a divisional matchup, for the SEC. What a great game. And I have a big-time Georgia Bulldog fan up here. The guy is from Queens. I'll give a shout-out to my man Sean. and he went to Georgia, Sal, and he's a diehard Bulldog fan, and he's sick. He said after the Bulldogs lost, because they were in the top 15 in the beginning of the season, and when they lost, he said, "You watch. Georgia's going to have a string together, a couple of wins at the end, just to bring them back into the top 25, but no chance at winning a championship." And I said this after that win this weekend, Sal. I said, "You keep an eye on the Georgia Bulldogs. They're not there this year, but I guarantee," I'm pulling a Joe Namath, "I guarantee that the Georgia Bulldogs will be in the BCS top 4 next year when the season ends." I'm telling you, behind Jacob Eason.
You got that Nostradamus hat on again.
I'm telling you, behind Jacob Eason, the quarterback, who's a real freshman quarterback, they got a great running game always in Georgia. Offensive line is solid. The kid is going to solidify into being I'll tell you another thing. He's going to be a number 1 draft pick. Might even very well be the first quarterback taken when he goes to the NFL. He's clearly going to be playing on Sundays. But as far as the Georgia Bulldogs, they're missing one piece, and Kirby Smart's going to tighten that up for next year, and that piece is the defense. They got the tools. They need to put it all together. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm looking forward to it. Hey, listen, that's all I got to look forward to is college football, because the Jets suck. The Mets are dragging their feet signing Cespedes. They gave up Bartolo Colon. Did you hear that? My New York Mets gave up Bartolo Colon. They couldn't match the offer that the Atlanta Braves gave them.
Wow.
I think the difference was $12 million difference. He's getting big. And Bartolo Colon was the best pitcher on the Mets, really, the most solid pitcher. I mean, Syndergaard was the stud. But Colon, so really, to be honest, losing him should definitely pave the way for the Mets to get Cespedes back. I know they're talking about bringing on Toronto's Jose Bautista. But and he's younger, and he's quite the hitter, but I much rather would have Cespedes. I think he just fits with the Mets organization a little better.
Well, let's even hope. I hope my Yankees are rebuilding and strategizing as well.
The Yankees? Do they still have a baseball team?
Easy.
I don't know, man. I mean, they should. They should have a baseball team, you would think. But
yes,
and I'm sure they're going to be competitive. But anyway. I was expecting our man Dax Khan to give us a shout, but looks like he's running late or whatever. But a little more on the Ortiz fight, and I know that it's a fight that we can't say too much more about other than it was dreadful. But where does that? I mean, let's be honest. Does it change the perception of Ortiz? Was it an off night? Did he just have we always say styles make fights. I mean, did he just have the wrong dance partner? I mean, what's the long-term effects of this fight? I mean, one of the emailers even said, now are the European fans going to turn their back on Luis Ortiz? I mean, what do you think?
Well, fundamentally, let's look at the basics. I mean, here's a guy, sure, he's had over 300 fights as an amateur and is undefeated with 26 wins now. But I'm telling you, just fundamentally, he should have ended that fight before the 12th round. And he followed Scott around the ring. He tried to, or attempt to look like he even knew how to cut the ring off on Scott. And like I said, it was a sleeper. A fighter of dominance. A fighter that's going to be one to reckon with and be a name of tomorrow. You've got to be a little more dominant. You've got to be able to put away a guy that's thinking out the house.
No doubt.
I didn't see it from Ortiz.
No doubt. And joining us right now to give us the lowdown on what's being said by the rest of the boxing fans via social media about the Ortiz-Malik Scott fight, among a couple other topics he's going to talk about, is my man Dax Khan. Good morning, Dax.
Good morning. I was having a few technical difficulties of my own, and I heard you saying. I thought Dax was calling in. I was dialing.
Hey, it's funny because
good morning, Dax.
I've been having all kinds of problems over the weekend. We had a severe wind up here on Friday. I think it started, and we had a whole row of telephone poles that are literally blown over, like they're like six feet off the ground. and the power company basically, and I kid you not, tied ropes to the telephone poles and spiked them into the ground to try to hold it off. And then I, luckily, because you know me, Dax, who has better luck than me, I drive past it and pick up a telephone spike in my brand new tire. You know, so that's how my weekend goes. I've lost 2 systems because the power's going on and off like a popcorn machine here. It's terrible. So tell us, what's social media saying after the snooze fest we're calling Ortiz Malik Scott?
Well, surprisingly enough, prior to the fight, a lot of people were giving Malik Scott a better chance than most were at winning. Especially Malik Scott had put out this short interview with, I forget exactly who it was, one of the outlets from over in the UK, where he was, he was being honest. He's about the Wilder loss. He said, I should have paid attention to the left and not think that he couldn't get that around my guard. That's what hurt me. Then he caught me with the right. As far as the Chisora fight, he said, I should have gotten up sooner. I was in the guy's home country. What was I thinking? Of course, I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to be given the benefit of the doubt. So he sounded like a guy who really wanted to go out there and win. So a lot of people were thinking this is going to be something that is worth watching, and Scott might give us a few answers on Ortiz. Especially for the ones that don't know of Luis Ortiz. He's kind of an enigma in the sport. But he goes out there, he's in survival mode. And, people just could not understand. And unfortunately, Luis Ortiz is the guy who got the most criticism for that. Instead of, of course everybody was, harsh on Malik Scott. But instead, Luis Ortiz was, right now he's being called, a hype job. He's being called, a built up. He has a built up resume. He's, and you can go on and on. Just those type of comments.
But Dax, wait. Don't you agree? I mean, we talked about this earlier, but don't you agree that fault does fall on Ortiz's shoulders? I mean, if Malik Scott was just going to survive, isn't it up to Ortiz to do what Triple G does when fighters want to survive? Cut the ring off and make it his fight. I mean, he failed to do that.
Absolutely. That is his that is what he should have done. You hit that on track before. I was going to say that myself. That what happens is Luis Ortiz, he doesn't have that footwork. He just really doesn't know how to cut that ring off, and he also showed a bad habit in terms of that sense of urgency. He doesn't seem like a guy who really wanted to put on a showstopper. He just knew he was in charge. He knew that Malik Scott wasn't offering anything for him. So why should I go out there and why should I take any chances? That's not what we want to see in a champion, especially when it's 37 years old, who needs to make a statement, to create himself a reason to get some of these big fights.
Yeah, well, you think, I don't know. I mean, he had an off night.
There's a guy.
I was hoping for a better.
There was a guy, who out there, to give him some credit. There's a guy out there who I seen in a stinker, and he was very frustrated back in 2013. And he apologized to his fans, which is something Luis Ortiz didn't do. And that's another thing that turns fans away from him now, is that Luis Ortiz seemed happy giving him the subpar performance. But Terence Crawford, when he fought Andre Klimov did much of the same thing. He made it such an ugly fight. Crawford won every round, but Terence Crawford couldn't get him out of there. Terence almost seemed like he was just happy putting his, building up those points in the bank. But then what happens is Crawford goes overseas. He beats Ricky Burns, Gamboa, so on. He becomes a pound-for-pound fighter just a couple of years later. So it's hard a lot of times when your opponent doesn't want to fight. If you get those opponents that really want to survive, it doesn't matter how good you are, what type of punch you are. If that opponent has some sort of boxing ability, he's going to survive, and he's going to make you look bad. Over in the UK, there's guys over there, as you speak about all the time, Bill, that are professional opponents. These are the guys that you don't see it here, but there they have literally 150, 200 losses. But they've only been knocked out 3 times. Why? Because they know how to survive, and this is their job. It seems to me that Malik Scott sort of spent a little extra time over there and learned from those guys, and that's what got him through this fight. What the real disgrace was, and where Luis Ortiz really should have stood up, and he should have showed that King Kong mentality, is when Malik Scott was out there trying to fool the referee and the fans that he was getting rabbit punched. That's when Ortiz should have just said, you know what, now it's time to show how dominant I am. Eddie Hearn's there, Anthony Joshua's looking at me, Dillian White's looking at me, Klitschko's looking at me. I'm 37 years old. I only have a few fights left in me, so it's do or don't. So Luis Ortiz, you know, he may be canceled sooner than later.
Yeah, no.
I think you're right, Dax. Perfectly said.
Yeah, you know, I just think that he needed to show that he could handle. You know, we all said it, and we talked about this earlier, styles make fights. You know, obviously Malik Scott, he's tall, he's got the arm reach. I would think that Luis Ortiz knew that he was going to try to utilize that, and he didn't have an answer. He, like Sal said earlier in the show, he followed him around like a puppy dog, and that's, you know, even experienced fighters like Manny Pacquiao sometimes gets into that groove of following his opponent around. You know, that's why I always say that Triple G is the best ring general in boxing, and he has been for the last 20 years. He doesn't let opponents do it. You know, Willie Monroe tried and failed. Everyone tried. But and just to back up before you get into the other topics, you know, Malik Scott said this, Malik Scott said that. You know, boxing has become the boy who cried wolf. For hopefully you younger fans out there read the book, but the boy who cried wolf, you know, I mean, and that's what boxing is. Everybody says in front of the cameras, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, wait till I get in the ring, I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, and they don't do it. You know, what is it going to take for fans to just say, forget about it, I'm not going to watch it anymore? And that card on PBC, I know you got two other things to talk about, Dax, but I just want to get your quick thoughts. The Danny Garcia card on Spike, that was a PBC card. To me, that is a classic. Now, no disrespect to PBC, because the PBC has delivered some really exciting fights, a la the Thurman Porter and the Kell Brook Leo Santa Cruz fight. But the majority of the fights have been cards exactly like we saw on Saturday night. One-sided beatdowns that featured fighters that shouldn't even be in the same ring with their opponent. The Jarrett Hurd fight, Jojo Dan, a tough guy, 2 weight classes smaller, and Jarrett Hurd was still fighting safety first. Danny Garcia in there with a proverbial punching bag, couldn't get the job done. I can't see him being competitive with Thurman. What's your thoughts on those two fights?
Jarrett Hurd, Jojo Dan. I like Jojo Dan. You said it great. He's a tough guy. He comes to fight, but he's also an opponent fighter.
Yeah, but put him in his own weight. Yeah, but put him in his own weight class. Let him fight in his own weight class.
Jarrett Hurd, I don't care what anybody tells me. He wasn't an ounce under 170.
It didn't even look. I was watching it with my son-in-law, and it didn't even look close to being the same weight class. I mean, it was a joke. And then
Amir Khan and Canelo were closer in size than they did.
Let me tell you, after the first shot that Jojo Dan landed, and he did land several flush shots on Jarrett Hurd. Hurd should have known at that point, hey, this guy can't hurt me, and go in for a really exciting knockout win, which is what they wanted him to do. Instead, he still fights cautious. He didn't want to get hit, even by punches that weren't hurting him. The sport has taken, I think if you watch the Jarrett Hurd, Jojo Dan fight, what you see is what this sport has become. Showcase fights, mismatches, a guy that looks good on paper fighting a much bigger, stronger guy, and the bigger, stronger guy fighting cautiously because he doesn't want to take any chances. To me, it was a travesty.
They're doing no favors for Jarrett Hurd. Jojo Dan is a name, that people will recognize. He's not a big puncher, as you stated, and he did get a lot of punches in. As a matter of fact, he was landing some combinations, 3, 4, 5 punches. Unfortunately, he couldn't hurt Jarrett Hurd, who came in as a cruiserweight. But, the thing that they're not doing any favors for him is that they could have got him other experienced opponents that were closer to his size, because when he has to go in there against somebody closer to his size with a little more experience, who has more pop behind the punches than a Jojo Dan, what we're going to see is a situation similar to what happened with Amir Imam against Adrian Granados 6 months ago, where he's going to think that he is able to walk in, overpower somebody, and he'll be the one landed on his back, and all of a sudden fans just say, "Told you he was another built-up hype job," and there you go.
Well, that's what happened. Yeah, and I've said this months ago, and I keep finding myself saying it over and over to people outside, the show and what have you. But boxing with these kinds of fights and these kinds of fighters, this safety first mentality. It's why we're not creating lifelong fans. It's why the sport's in trouble. And let's be real, all sports are in trouble. I'm losing interest in football, something I've loved since I could learn how to walk, and the ratings are down. So I'm not the only one. All the ratings are down, because all this safety first bullshit is listen, I get it. I want athletes to be safe, but not at the expense of the sport in which they play. And that's the same thing that's happening in boxing. The expense that we're facing with these types of fights is the longevity of the sport. It's not going to survive. It's not. It can't. It can't.
These guys here, as you always say, and even Floyd himself comes out and says, they're trying to follow my blueprint on how to be a businessman, make money in the sport. And great, make all the money you can, but you have to fight. Floyd has had some great fights, and we won't even get into that topic.
Great fights? No, he's had some wins. Floyd
look good again.
Wait a minute,
like
Floyd. Hey, wait a second. Floyd has won some fights, but he hasn't had great fights. Not for a decade. Come on, you know that.
Anytime I see Floyd when he was under 140, I thought all his fights were exciting.
Yeah, well, that was more than 10 years ago.
But still, he's had them. He turned into a businessman, is my point. And that's his point. These other guys want to do that, but you know what? You got to get yourself into that position. These guys want to start out like that. Danny Garcia has had so many close calls in the last 2 years. He's actually lost 2 fights, in my opinion, definitely. I think he lost to Lamont Peterson, and I do believe that he lost to Mauricio Herrera. This was supposed to be a guy to make him look good in Samuel Vargas. He did. It was a tune-up. It was more or less the same thing Andre Ward did with Alexander Brand. But then you have Keith Thurman, again, talking about himself nonstop, as usual, in the third person. That's not one time in the ring. Yeah, sure, he's correct. That's not one time in the ring. He's criticizing the opponent that he's having inside, that Garcia's having inside the ring. But he forgets some of his opponents. Now, there's a guy out there. There's 2 guys in that division. One is still the 147-pound IBF title holder who says, I'm not vacating that title. He is going to fight probably the most dangerous up-and-coming prospect in that division, Errol Spence. They both have common opponents with Thurman and Garcia. Spence has literally just destroyed those common opponents that Thurman and Garcia have with him, yet both of them continue talking about how Spence needs to prove themselves. Now, what is left to prove? These guys are going to fight each other in the spring. Where is the winner going to go, and where's the loser going to go, and what is it more that they're going to have to prove? These guys here are getting stale. This is a fight that should happen a year or 2 ago. Danny Garcia is not a true 147, and really, in my opinion, Keith Thurman, he wasn't that impressive inside the Sean Porter fight. He learned more or less how to do the rope-a-dope inside that fight. He's become a salesman for himself, and Danny Garcia's father's a salesman for himself. These young guys coming up are the ones, and I keep stressing, who should be getting the spotlight. And the reason why the Errol Spence and Danny Garcia are fighting each other is because both of them have those little holes in them that Al Heyman and the rest of the PBC team knows that are in there. And the best fight, as you're saying, Floyd and Manny, it's the only fight that makes sense. The only fight that makes sense is to put these guys in there with each other, because once they lose to one of these up-and-coming guys, forget it. They're no more marketable, and the fans are going to be able to say, we told you so, and that's the end of that. The money train's over. Listen,
the PBC now, really, I mean, the elephant in the room, right, is the PBC is a fraud. All the fighters that are signed under Al Heyman and the PBC, all you got to do is look at them and look at who they fought and look at who they've ducked and look at where, yes, they're getting more money. Yes, they're getting on TV and all of that stuff. But the bottom line is they're not fighting the real fights. They're dividing themselves. They're not even putting themselves in the same categories as these other fighters, like you mentioned, Errol Spence. Keith Thurman is just avoiding, focusing like Danny Garcia is the main fight. Come on. And I will disagree with you. Keith Thurman did fight some good fighters. He changed his style after the Bundu fight. And the Porter fight was a good fight, but Keith Thurman, the person, it's grown very old to me, and I just don't see Danny Garcia being competitive.
Remember, Keith Thurman, to interrupt you, Keith Thurman's a guy that said Marcos Maidana isn't a guy worth me fighting. What has he done? What can I prove by fighting Marcos Maidana?
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, but it's the same thing as fans were trying to say that Mayweather can beat Triple G, so therefore he doesn't have to fight him. I mean, it's just stupidity. It's ignorance. You know, it's the people that have drank the Kool-Aid, the bullshit bag of Kool-Aid from Al Heyman and the PBC, and they believe that crap. You know. So anyway, what's the door? You got some updates on Mago Abdulzamov?
You know, he's sadly enough, you know, his wife Bakani says that, you know, up until these last few months, you know, Mago would, you know, want to try. You know, he would go out in the park with their daughters. You know, he would want to sit with the family, watch TV. He would, you know, try to joke around, you know, do his best. Even at his worst, he would be very receptive when everybody walked into the room. His eyes would light up. But now, more or less, it seems that he's pretty much lost his will and his desire to continue on. He just wants to lay in bed. He won't talk. He's always sad. You know, he doesn't even want to spend time with his daughters anymore. You know, he doesn't even want to go in his wheelchair anymore and sit out with the family in the living room. He doesn't want to see any guests. The last two times that people stopped by to visit him, they've had to go into the bedroom to see him, when usually he would get into his wheelchair and he would be out there, and, you know, he would be the one that was more or less the life of the group. Even when guys like Sergey Kovalev went down to visit him, you know, Mago was very receptive, and, you know, he was always listening and doing his best to communicate. And now he just pretty much wants to lay in bed, and he's given up. He's lost a lot of weight. You know, he looks like he's about 50 instead of in his mid-30s. I know that their daughters are taking it very hard, and his wife back in there saying she doesn't know what to do anymore, and she doesn't know if anymore she's going to be able to take care of him, considering the fact that he doesn't want to try for himself. And so it looks like at this point in time, if Mago doesn't somehow a little bit show this desire that he wants to continue on, that he's going to have to be placed somewhere, because it's too much for his wife to take care of. Well, she has 3 children, 10, 7, and 3, and, you know, having a 250-pound, 35-year-old child there to take care of too would just be too much for her. She's a tiny little thing. She's only about 4'11".
That's very disheartening and sad news. Unfortunately, you know, I can't put myself. Thank God, I can't put myself in that position. I don't think anyone can. And to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know if I could keep a positive attitude if I'm watching all my life basically drained out of me right in front of me, and especially if I know what's going on, and like he does. And I mean, to say that he's in a depression is an understatement. And all I can say is, to all you people out there that are woe-is me and you're in depression, you want to take meds, you want to do this, you want to do that, take a look at Mago Abdulzamov. He's got a reason to be depressed. You probably don't. So, yeah, my prayers and thoughts go out to Mago and his family, especially his wife and his daughters. Not much else I can say on that one, Dax.
And, you know, it happens. You know, short story, I have an uncle who, when I was younger growing up, you know, we would go upstate to visit him. He had a dairy farm, and, you know, that was a big deal to us. You know, in the city, he would always lift us up and let us touch the cream in the bottom of the those machines that pasteurized the milk. And you know, even to his 70s, he was still very active. And then when he was about 77, he broke a hip, and he had to go into a nursing home. And within a month, he became very depressed, and, you know, more or less, he started to deteriorate. And he seemed like all of a sudden he just didn't want to live anymore. And he goes home, and he's around his family, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, he's like a new man. And up until he was 94, he was actually, you know, walking around continuously with his cane, even though he was in a lot of pain. What it does, the fact of the matter is, he wanted to be around everybody, and the fact that he had to sit and do nothing is what really made him depressed, considering he was a man who always was around doing things constantly every day, getting up at 3 in the morning, going to bed at 9 at night. As you stated, he, you know, was watching himself deteriorate, so that's what depressed him. And unfortunately, Mago, he's not in such a condition where he's able to get up and do more mentally, because he has a brain injury, so it's a little bit more than physical for him. And, you know, so all we can do is just hope that that this guy somehow gets some sort of break. Whether or not his mental condition improves in terms of what he's able to do physically. Hopefully his outlook can at least change, because he is a young man and he does have young children. And even if your father's in a wheelchair and he's sick, when you're 10, you're 7, you're 3 years old, you just want your father there as long as he's there. That's what's important, no matter what shape or condition he's in.
Right. No, I agree with you. And Dax, I know you were on the final Kovalev Ward media call. You got some comments on that real quick? We're kind of running out of time, but what's the big ones?
The big ones on there is one is that it seems to me Rock Nation they've really invested everything into Ward. In my opinion, from the way that call went, Rock Nation, and when you listen to Michael Yarmak, who is the chief of branding and strategy, if Andre Ward loses this fight, Rock Nation's in trouble. Their two biggest names outside of Andre Ward, Miguel Cotto, Guillermo Rigondeaux, they're out, very inactive. They sat there and they don't know how to take care of business when they introduced Ward on a media call. Now remember, this is a media call, not a public press conference. He's naming down every single sponsor that Andre Ward has as if they're getting paid for this. And people on the media are like, are you kidding me? Andre Ward had an attitude. He did not want to be on the call. Anytime he was asked a question, he became snotty. One media member asked him, who's the hardest puncher you've ever been within prior to Sergey Kovalev? And Ward replies, why don't you tell me? You guys have all the answers.
Yeah, well, listen, he's a diva. This is a big fight this weekend. It's going to answer a lot of questions. The excuse is already in place. If Ward loses, he's going to say, well, I manned up, I moved up in weight, it's not my natural weight, blah, 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 blah. And you hit it right on the head, Dax, when you said that Rock Nation is in serious trouble if Ward does not win this fight. I know that. Not only are you right, but I know that as a fact, because members of Rock Nation have told me one-on-one exactly that they have put all their eggs in Andre Ward's basket, that he will be dictating how this company moves forward based on his performance against Kovalev. So there's a lot riding on Ward's performance on Saturday night for Rock Nation.
I think that's getting to Ward, to be honest with you, from the way Ward was behaving. Because Sergey Kovalev, Bill and Sal, he was so relaxed. Matter of fact, one of the highlights of the call is when somebody was asking how come, and matter of fact, that was my question, where Kathy, she was a little bit confused, not by the question, but how come people are, where I'm saying, the way that a lot of people are talking about this is as if Sergey is the B-side fighter. Meanwhile, Andre's been the inactive fighter. He hasn't fought a top name in going on 3 years. And here you have Sergey is the guy who's relishing. He loves this moment, and people who want to see Sergey lose, they have this mentality like a lot of Floyd Mayweather fans had or Ricky Hatton fans had, that their guy is always going to win no matter who they're against. And Sergey says with his accent, and this is the best part of the whole call, he goes, haters are going to hate.
This is true.
And when you heard that from him in his Russian accent, the whole call just got quiet right there, and everybody just burst out laughing. Sergey Kovalev, haters are going to hate.
It's true. And there's a lot riding on this fight for both fighters' careers, and like you mentioned, the Rock Nation situation. And personally, I don't think that is on Andre Ward's mind. I think Andre Ward, knowing that he may not be able to win this fight, is on his mind. He wants to get into acting now, from what I understand, and he wants to do everything but boxing. So I think he's mentally accepted that maybe his career, this might be his last fight. Maybe that's why the attitude, because let's face it, he doesn't give a rat's ass about the success of Rock Nation or not. He's all about himself, so...
he shouldn't give he shouldn't care about the success of Rock Nation. Andre Ward, like any fighter, this is their career. Rock Nation is the promoter. They should be handling their company. But it's not the end of his career. If he can't accept the loss, then that really says something about the ego. No matter how great you are, and we've seen it with all the greats, they have a loss. It happens. And then what really makes you great is how you move on from there. With Sergey Kovalev, my big question is, he's a better boxer than people credit him for. A lot of people who look into the sport more, do say, he is a very good fighter. Bernard Hopkins, is a guy who's says, I'm tired of hearing people sit there and say about, bringing up the age of when Kovalev beat me, because Kovalev really just one of the best boxers I was ever in the ring with. And then you add in that power. When I see how Jean Pascal reacted, a guy who had an iron chin, when Kovalev hit him, it brings up that old expression, everybody has a plan till you get hit. And Andre Ward, you may have a plan, but when Kovalev hits you and hurts you like that, where's your plan going to go? And that might be what he's thinking, because he's seen it happen to other guys.
Dax, I appreciate your insight, and we'll look forward to you later in the week, man.
All right, everybody. Have a good day.
Take care. That's Dax Gunn. Check out his column up on BillyCBoxing.com. And, Sal, my point about Ward was that I'm not saying that his career is over in the boxing world. I think it would be over to him mentally if he loses the fight. I think that he's similar to Mayweather when, with them putting all the value in the O. That's what was my point on that. I don't think that, he should be looked upon as his career being over if he loses. I just think that mentally it might be over. And while we're talking about it real quick before we wrap it up, Kovalev Ward this weekend, we will be doing a post-fight show, so everybody knows the deal there. 6 minutes after the official announcement is made, you could tune it in right here on BillyCBoxing.com or download it on Fight TV. Watch it live. You can get the Fight TV app for free. Just go with your handheld app, fight.tv, that's FITE.tv/BillyC, and download the app today. And I will tell you this, I think the pressure is going to fall on Kovalev to be able to do exactly what Luis Ortiz did not do. He's going to have to be able to cut that ring off and control Andre Ward, because if not, we might see a similar fight that we saw Ortiz against Malik Scott. What do you think?
I think I don't think it'll turn into that, because I think, you do have, the diva mentality of Ward that's going to want to put on a show and try to close big if he's dominant. And you also have the utter dominance factor from Kovalev wanting to bring some thunder into the ring. So I think they have a little more pride and a little more value on the line. And, it reminded me when we were talking about the Ortiz-Scott fight earlier, along with styles make fight, Billy, I always say, and it's one of my favorite sayings, you're only as good as your last fight. And you look at that fight, Luis Ortiz and Malik Scott, how's their marquee value after the fight? Where do you want to put them? How much value did they lose? Well, I think you're going to see Ward and Kovalev. They'll both be coming out with some good value after this fight, because you're only as good as your last fight. I don't think they're going to put on a stinker like the Ortiz-Scott fight.
Well, I hope not, and I hope you're right. Yeah. And I think that the value of Kovalev skyrockets even more if he wins. I'm not so sure what Ward gains if he wins, because Ward is a self-proclaimed pound-for-pound top fighter already, and all these people are already putting him in. Now we can't criticize Ward's resume because he did fight the best of the best, but that was 6 years ago. So I'm not sure if he can rise any higher. I think the problem with Ward is he's got a terrible personality that he's just he's not a likable guy, even though he's a good guy. Outside the ring, he is a good guy. He's a God-fearing guy, which doesn't necessarily make you a good guy, but he is a good guy. I've met him personally. Very humble when you meet him in person. But I just don't think there's the fighters traditionally that the fans love are the worst fighters outside the ring. I don't know. I think Sergey Kovalev's in a position, if he wins, his career skyrockets, his value skyrockets. If Ward wins, I'm not sure how much more it goes up, but if he loses, it's definitely going to go down.
Yeah, definitely. And I have a feeling Kovalev's going to win.
Oh, I picked Kovalev. Listen, I already picked Kovalev. I'm officially picking Kovalev. I think Kovalev is not only going to win, I think he's going to stop Andre Ward. I think that John David Jackson will have Kovalev ready for the movement, and I think that the key will be for Sergey Kovalev to cut the ring off and not get hit while he's doing it. You see, Ward can move, and assuming that Ward is a smart guy, he knows that Kovalev has to cut. He knows that Kovalev has to cut the ring off. So if I'm Andre Ward, I continue my game plan, make Sergey Kovalev cut the ring off. knowing that he's going to try, but let my hands go as I'm moving around. So Kovalev is concentrating on cutting the ring off, but at the same time taking punches. Will it be exciting? No, but it will be a win for Andre Ward. I think the pressure on this fight, even though Andre Ward has pressure on him to win and to save Rock Nation, so to speak, like Dax mentioned, and I agree with, I think the real pressure is on Kovalev to make it his fight. Listen, we got the makings of a good fight Saturday night. It's well worth a pay-per-view. I'm looking forward to it, Sal.
Me too. You know what? Like I said, this is one of the big fights that I am looking forward to. And it's a shame, and I do apologize that we weren't able to put things together to have it down by me, but we will do a good post-fight, and I'm looking forward to this fight. I really am, so it's going to be a good fight.
Well, we got almost a full week to talk about it. We will not be doing a live show tomorrow, as Tuesday has become kind of a tough day for us, but we will be back the rest of the week, breaking down the fights, giving you all the latest and greatest boxing news, and then some. And right now, I'll tell you what happened on this day in boxing history. Today is November 14th, and on this day in 1917, Mike O'Dowd knocks out Al McCoy. And by the way, this is the guy that got the real McCoy nickname, and the reason was because you never knew which McCoy was going to show up. He was kind of branded as a guy who took dives and et cetera, et cetera. So it was like, well, will the real McCoy show up? But nonetheless, on this day in 1917, Mike O'Dowd knocks out Al McCoy to win the world middleweight title. It took place in Brooklyn, New York. On this day in 1930, Tony Canzoneri knocks out Al Singer in the first round to win the world lightweight title. It took place in New York City. On this day in 1980, you remember this guy, Jeff Chandler, knocks out Julian Solis to win the WBA world bantamweight title. It took place in Miami, Florida. Yep. This is one of your favorite fighters in this day in 1981, Aaron Pryor. Knocks out DeJuan Johnson in the 7th round to retain his WBA World Junior Welterweight title. Took place in Cleveland, Ohio. In this day in 1998, Roy Jones Jr. knocks out Otis Grant in the 10th round to retain his WBA and WBC World Light Heavyweight titles. And that took place at Foxwoods Resort and Casino in Connecticut. Yours truly was ringside. And on this day, November 14th, in 1966, Muhammad Ali knocks out Cleveland Williams in the 3rd round to retain his world heavyweight title, and that took place at the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, on this day in 1966. That pretty much concludes our show for today. We will be back on Wednesday. Do you have any final thoughts, Sal?
I just wanted to say hi to our good friend and the president of the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame, Henry Haskell. I've been getting emails of late, and we're losing some top champs and some fighters in the boxing community. And I read throughout some of the media that Flash Gordon, I think, passed away too. It was remember Flash Gordon?
Yeah, he was. We've done some spotlights on him. I didn't get all the particulars. That's why I didn't bring it up today. But Alordi Flash Gordon was a good. Now Alordi Flash Gordon was the former champ. If this was the same guy. Yes.
And then there's also Randy Gordon, but Flash Gordon was. I think he was involved with Ring Magazine, and he used to have his own little underground newsletter he started and things like that. And he was a big boxing guy. And I used to see him hang around the streets of New York and come to the Gleasons and all that stuff. And he was a good man. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, we've lost some trainers.
I don't know the details.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've lost some really top-notch trainers and some fighters. Yes. And, it's true. We're losing a lot. But hey, thanks for ending the show on a real depressing note, Sal.
Oh, wait, let me know. Then let's do a positive note.
All right.
But Billy, we made some comments about the survivorship and what the likelihood of boxing is going to be on what track if it continues in a direction. And I tend to have faith in fighters of the future. I think boxing, even if it hit rock bottom, I think there's always going to be those future stars that are going to want to prove themselves mano a mano, to come out there and be the tough guys of tomorrow and to show the world. So I think boxing even though it'll have its ebb and flow with the tide, I think we're going to have some real good fighters evolving over the next couple of years. They're going to really give it what you and I miss and compare it to back when we say back in the old days.
Well, what we need, what we need is we need a character. We need a boxer that's going to come out, that's going to be able to relate to the masses, that's going to be exciting, that fights all comers. And we may, you're 100% right. We very well may have those guys in place right now. Anthony Joshua could very well be that guy. Luis Ortiz, if he straightens out his act, he could be that guy in the heavyweight division. You know, we're knocking Keith Thurman. Well, we're knocking guys like Keith Thurman and stuff, but he does have the tools to be that guy. You know, Sean Porter has the tools to be that guy. The problem is that we've lost the track of the sport and the greatness of the sport of boxing. What we've taken on now is safety first, money first, blah, blah, blah. And although I can't blame the combatants for wanting to make the most money for the least amount of work, the truth of the matter is it's hurting the longevity of the sport. So until we can meet someplace halfway, you're going to see the PBC really dry up. They're going to dry up because I can't see fans sticking with them very long. They're not going to pay outrageous purses for guys like Danny Garcia to beat up Samuel Vargas. They're not going to pay outrageous purses to see a snooze fest like Luis Ortiz and Malik Scott. So that kind of stuff, basically, all boxing has to do to get back on the map, Sal, is create a product that fans are going to be interested in at the cost of the fighter, at the cost of the promoter, at the cost of the network. That's neither here nor there. Once they create a product that the fans will pay for and love and talk about, then it will be back to where it's at. Everything else needs to find a happy medium. Really, there's no other way to put it. And I don't want to sound barbaric or you know.
Well said, Bill. Well said.
I don't want to sound like I don't care about the well-being of the athletes, because I certainly do. But there has to be a happy medium, man.
I agree. You said it 100% correct. I agree with you.
Well, send me a couple of cannolis for my efforts. How about that?
I'm going to do that, absolutely.
Well, listen, we'll be back on Wednesday. And our blast from the past this week is Tommy the Hitman Hearn, so we'll be talking about that.
I love Tommy.
Yeah, and we'll be chatting about that. Thursday, we'll have another full day, and Friday we'll open up the phone line. So we got a busy week scheduled, except for tomorrow, Sal. We won't be here.
Tomorrow, there won't be tomorrow, but Wednesday will be okay.
Well, with that, I'll leave you guys with this. Make sure you tune in Wednesday morning, same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby.
Batman.